Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another edition of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Scott Gulbransen with you. Thanks for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it. Do us a favor while you're there. We got you kind of stuck, right? You're listening to us. Got to do us a favor, though. Not if you're driving. Wait till you pull over. But nonetheless, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black today. Also, rate and review if you would. We appreciate that very much. Put on that auto download on your phone. Make sure it's there. That way, every time we have a new episode, the off season is about to get really hot, so you don't want to miss out on that. So subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, wherever you're watching us, whatever video platform, we're on all of them. Make sure you subscribe there too. We appreciate it on YouTube specifically. Hit that notifications bell and give us a thumbs up. We also love your participation. Make sure you jump in and comment. You know, we had a caller a couple weeks ago talking about how Mo and I should be more like hot take generated or have stronger opinions. Well, you know, we stayed true to ourselves here on the show. And I'll tell you, we have, though, in the last couple weeks. Last week, I went on this show and I said, listen, for those of you who are poo-pooing or not real excited about Geno Smith, you're missing the boat, especially at 23 years since you had a quarterback that actually did something, right? And I say did something as far as somebody who could move the team along further. Derek Carr, of course, had some great numbers and some good years, don't get me wrong. But to me, at this situation and what's going on, and what happened? Oh, you guys you're overselling it. So just goes to show you, as much as we love our audience, not everybody is satisfied no matter what you do. And so it's a good lesson for life, by the way. Don't listen to the outside noise. Just do what's you, right? You'll find your audience, you'll find your way, but we certainly appreciate it. And we certainly appreciate you being here. Today, we're going to get into Geno Smith, obviously had his extension finalized. So for those of you who were sweating in this after the trade, there you go. You don't have to worry about it anymore. He has signed a 2 year extension, $85 million. And he spoke to the media. We're going to get into some of those clips because I think there's some interesting things there. Also, I just think it should, again, I look at this objectively, but as a Raiders fan, as a member of Raider Nation, you should be excited about this guy. Not, you know, is he a top 5 quarterback? Of course not. He's getting paid as a middle of the road quarterback. And that's what he is. Although his perseverance, his career, what he's been able to do and overcome, and not only that, but if you look at the situation with what he's been able to do where he's at, he's done well, and his leadership skills. Leadership. I think that's what this team has lacked in the last few years with the quarterbacks. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo, not a vocal guy, and his skill set had deteriorated so much. Then you get Aiden O'Connell, a good young guy, but not a vocal leader, not somebody who's going to take over a game and lead you to victory that way. He's a good backup quarterback, I think a good asset for this Raiders team, but not that guy. And of course, Gardner Minshew wasn't that guy either. So now you have somebody who has that oomph, that kind of gravitas, that presence that you want in a starting quarterback. And he talked about that. So we're going to get into that. And then, of course, in segment number 2, we're going to get to your calls. So make sure you stay on board for that. Got some interesting ones, including an international call. Yes, we have listeners all over the world, and we're thankful for that. And thank you all, no matter where you're listening. But we got an international call as well as some old favorites on the line, and we'll get to them as well. So that's all great. Also, make sure if you want to call into the show and be a part of the show, you can do so. 702-900-7869 is the number. 702-900-7869 is the number to get onto the show for the next edition. We're going to have a lot of draft content coming up in the next couple of weeks, so get prepared for that, including some great guests that we have lined up, which we'll tell you about soon. So make sure you do that. But want to get the mood for you. I think the Geno Smith press conference to me was great. I know people were freaking out. I was never worried about it. I think I talked about it on the show. The extension, they wanted to do that. That was the issue in Seattle. And as it looks, based on reports, it looks like the Raiders got Geno Smith even less than he was asking from the Seahawks for an extension. The trade triggers it. He gets back with his coach, Pete Carroll, who obviously he has a very close relationship with. And here we are. So that was good. But there was a couple things that struck me, and I want to see if you feel the same way, because I think Geno Smith, going back to what I made the point earlier, about leadership, about being a guy who's going to lead a young team, young players with an offense that's really, really struggled, but has some weapons, will add weapons in this draft, Ashton Genty, then I think you should be excited about it. And to me, that's what, press conferences are press conferences. They never go bad, very rarely at the very least. And so you don't expect him to come out there and for you to be, as a fan especially, to be disappointed by what he says. But I do want to play through some of these clips and talk about it. And the first one is just the intro to the press conference and what he says about becoming a Raider and really getting into the idea of becoming part of Raider Nation. So let's get into that, and I'll come back. We'll talk about it, and I want to get your comments, which you can also leave below in the video if you're watching us on video, or if you're watching us on the audio side, whether it's on Spotify, wherever, you can leave comments there too, and call in and leave your message. All right, so let's kick this off with Geno Smith and his first words to the media assembled there in Las Vegas about the trade that made him a Raider.
We're really excited to get here and get to work. Really excited to get to know all my teammates, get to know all the fans, really immerse myself into, Las Vegas and be a part of this thing. I've always, revered the Raiders from afar, the silver and black, all the nostalgia when you think about just, the NFL. The Raiders is a big part of that. And we're here to win. We're here to do this thing the right way. I want to lead the right way. I want to be a big part of, the culture here and just doing the right things and really just leave my mark on my teammates.
So there you go. Again, after all these years of not being successful on the field, the Raiders brand and Geno Smith talked about there, the mystique, the history, right? The Al Davis, all the things that Al Davis contributed to the NFL and the Raiders contributed to the NFL, especially those early days moving forward and throughout up until the last 25 years, it's a big deal, right? And so to me, the point about him revering the Raider history and wanting to be a part of it. And I think, again, we probably think or undersell it and oversell it at sometimes. But that's the point that I thought was good in that side. And I bring in my partner now, Mr. Mo Moton, joins us as well. Mo, we were just kicking off the show and talking about Geno Smith's introduction to the Las Vegas media, the national media, as now the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders. And I was just talking about how Geno Smith really brought up the legacy of the Raiders and being part of that. And I think, Geno Smith, having been around the league, having been part of several organizations now, including the Jets and the Seahawks, I think sometimes the Raider mystique is not revered as much as it used to be. But with players and people who love football, it really hasn't lost much despite 25 plus years of really struggling. You're right, Scott. Oh, we don't hear your microphone, Mo, but that's okay. We'll get him going. That's okay. He was ready to go. He just needs to turn the microphone on, because it just happens sometimes, right? I mean, I get all kinds. We get comments here too. If I get the mix wrong, sometimes we'll have one person will be higher, one person will be lower, and it's like, meh. So that's what I love about our listeners, though. They will let us know, but we need to hear Mo if they're going to criticize him first, right? So we'll get him back there. Mo, we got you now, right?
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, we got you now. We're good.
Okay, so it's one of those days, of course, for me.
That's okay. It happens, man. We all have them.
But what I was saying before I wasn't ready to talk was one thing I noticed with any time we have a press conference, or but Raiders have a press conference, is players bring up the Raider history. And I think Mark Davis is the reason for that. Not that he tells them what to say, but you hear about Mark Davis and how he takes care of Raider alumni, former Raiders. Once a Raider, always a Raider is a saying you hear a lot on social media. But I hate to say it, Scott. I'm going to sound like I'm going to throw a wet blanket on this, but it's always pretty much the same message.
Yes.
I always love the Raiders from afar. And I think this is a way to endear himself to the fans. I'm not saying it's not genuine, but anytime you join an organization and the organization is all about past and present Raiders, the first thing you should do is acknowledge the Raiders as a franchise you want to play for, and as a franchise that you, as Geno Smith said, revered from afar. So I expected that. I expected to hear that at some point from Geno Smith. It's, don't get me wrong, it's good that he said that and did want to endear himself to the fan base, because those are the people that are going to support you on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays, and you want to have the fan base behind you. And he talked about having the fan base against him, and how it was with him in Seattle with Pete Carroll, and how important it is to have those same people now behind him. Now he's wearing the silver and black.
Right. And what you want in the future, right, Mo, is you want guys when they come to the Raiders, whether it be via draft, trade, free agency, whatever, is to say, I wanted to be part of this team and this culture because they win. And it was my best opportunity to get a championship, to get a Super Bowl ring. That's what you want them to say. And yeah, the history plays into it. But I totally relate to this from a fan perspective, because I went to UNLV, and if you're old enough to remember when UNLV was relevant in college basketball, including the national championship. In fact, I was tweeting out videos just a few days ago saying, "Oh man, it's been 35 years." So I have to live in the past, because there's not been, with the exception of a few years, there's not been a lot of excitement. But the history is there. But what you want with the history is you want the current, and you want people to be part of it, not because of, with all due respect to these guys, because they're legends and Hall of Famers, Fred and Blitnikoff and Howie Long, those are all great guys. And you should never forget what they did for the franchise and for the sport. But that was then. This is now. You want to build that culture and be able to get guys that are excited about the now versus just giving a callback to the past. So, so, by the way, make sure you follow Mo on X. Mo is a senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, also a Raiders columnist at sportsnet.com. Follow him at Mo Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully. All right, Mo, let's get in this second clip. I got 4 total from Geno Smith here I want to get into and get your comments on. Here is the next one. Here's Geno Smith talking about the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, initially, when I thought this was a possibility, just Coach Carroll alone, drew interest here, and getting to know all the inner workings, getting to meet John, getting to talk to Tom, Brady, and just really just understand what this thing is about and the direction they're going. I saw myself aligning with that, and
all right, Mo. So let's talk about that too, because again, that was about the now, right? I was just saying, he's talking about Tom Brady, he's talking about Spytek, he's talking about obviously Pete Carroll. When you talk about quarterbacks in the NFL and coaches, right? So you have head coach, you have offensive coordinator. Of course, we'll talk about that too in the next clip. But when you look at Geno Smith, you look at that close personal relationship that he has with Pete Carroll, and then the football relationship, them being on the same page, having worked together at a higher level before. How big of a deal is that? And how should Raider Nation think through that as they think about Geno Smith coming in to work with Pete Carroll?
So one of the things that I said this week on my Bleacher Report Live is I feel like one of the reasons that Geno Smith came to Las Vegas is a trust factor with Pete Carroll. So the Seattle Seahawks obviously moved on from Carroll a year ago. They bring in Mike McDonald. And during the season, Mike McDonald is turning over the roster, let go of a linebacker or two, traded DK Metcalf in the offseason to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Geno Smith can see the changes around him. They cut Tyler Lockett. So he's probably looking around and thinking, how long is my leash here? How if I mess up, what happens to me? If I have a rough start, what happens to me if this head coach feels like he's under pressure? Also fired the offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, who came from Washington. And I think when Geno Smith looked at the possibility, he said initially he didn't even think this was a possibility for him. But Albert Breer reported that Tom Brady was part of this process too. And if Tom Brady is selling something to you with a guy that you've already worked with and won 2022 Comeback Player of the Year with and been a 2-time been a Pro Bowler with, then you're looking and saying, I trust that situation more than the situation I'm in, which is a little bit, it's fluid with the changes around me. So even though Pete Carroll is obviously a defensive-minded head coach, his philosophy is still going to be imprinted on this team, offense and defense. And knowing Pete Carroll, Geno Smith likely feels I can succeed here. Not only can I come to the Raiders and play with somebody like Brock Bowers, who's all-pro rookie, Jacoby Myers, he talked about Jacoby Myers being a pretty good receiver because he played with the Jets for a bit. But you're looking at the connection between Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, and you're thinking, okay, this could get off to a pretty fast start. Because usually when you have a new head coach, a new quarterback, you're like, okay, there could be bumps in the road, growing pains. These two guys know each other already. Pete Carroll knows how to get the most out of Geno Smith, even though he's a defensive-minded head coach. And I think that's something to consider when you think about the Raiders' win-loss record going into the 2025 season.
And just you could search on YouTube or wherever you watch videos and find the story about Geno Smith and his kind of football resurrection, or at least coming into his own when he got to Seattle, and how much he credits Pete Carroll for that, right? So he played his best ball under Pete Carroll. And it's not too often in the NFL that you get a second chance to go back into a situation with a coach. In the NFL, a coach gets fired. Very rarely does a starting quarterback get to go and follow their former head coach. It happens, don't get me wrong, but not a ton, not very often. So the fact that they can now get back together and the mental side of that and the relationship between a head coach and a quarterback in the NFL, we've seen it go bad, right, throughout the league. And when it's good, it's about trust. And so to me, those comments, the fact that they're so close is a big deal, as you mentioned, for all those reasons. And here he is talking, again, here's Geno Smith at the press conference the other day, talking about working with Pete Carroll and what it's about. And of course, Pete Carroll has to jump in at the end as well. So you'll hear from him a little bit. Here we go.
Yes, sir. That's a great way to put it. I think there is unfinished business, and I think, when people think about my story, Coach Carroll was a big part of that. He gave me an opportunity when not many people would have, and he saw, the hard work that I was putting in. He saw the things behind the scenes that I do that allowed me to get this opportunity. But to be able to play for him, and again to be a part of this organization, it means everything to myself and my family. I was just telling him, man, I'll run through a wall for him, and he knows that, and I'll do the same for my teammates and for this organization. And so I just want that to be, kind of who I am, and I want that to be the statement of who I am as the quarterback of this team.
I might want to say that I might hit that wall before you get there. Okay?
I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen
When
it.
Pete took his year off, could you have envisioned a year later that you guys would be reunited? Not in Seattle, obviously, someplace else. Was that thought even?
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know this was a possibility. I mean, the way that life works, you just kind of take it step by step and day by day. But it's kind of how God works, man. Fate, I would think, is a big.
There you go. Fate being a big part of it there, as Geno Smith talks about Pete Carroll. And Mo, I think the important thing here, obviously what he said, we talked about the relationship and how close they are. It makes a lot of sense. So not surprising there. But talk about the importance of having a guy. You're Pete Carroll. You're coming in. You have to remake a roster. You have to reset the culture yet again for the Raiders. Having somebody like Geno Smith, who is already bought in, knows how the program goes under Pete Carroll, even though some things will be different. How important is that? And what is it having a guy like that, especially when it's your starting quarterback, come in there and lead the rest of that roster and help Pete Carroll try to ingrain that culture in the building out in Henderson?
You got to have that buy-in from your quarterback. Leadership. It's a leadership position, whether you want to accept that quality of the position or not. And I think one of the things that I'm not a press conference guy. I'm not a person who fawns over press conferences. But Geno Smith was speaking as a leader already at that press conference. And you could tell, like, he's talked about getting Brock Bowers better, and also Brock Bowers helping him and being able to lead that football team. He's stepping in and he's saying, I know I'm new here, but I'm here to lead this football team. And he talked about being second head coach as a backup quarterback. Now knowing Pete Carroll and being familiar with Chip Kelly, because Chip Kelly coaches cousin Jeremiah at Ohio State, he's going to step in and not be afraid to be a vocal leader and do his best to lead that football team, not just by example, but as a vocal leader as well. And I think that's important because that's what the Raiders need, because they really didn't have that over the past couple of years after Derek Carr. If you remember with Aiden O'Connell, one of the things we were talking about in the offseason was Aiden O'Connell working on his leadership qualities. Remember, Aiden O'Connell is not a talker, not a vocal guy, and he had been working on that this offseason. I don't know how far he came as a leader while he was playing this past offseason, but now you have a quarterback who can lead by example and also be a vocal leader in that locker room. I think it means a lot because we talked about Max Crosby doing that for the defensive side of the ball, and the Raiders didn't really have that on offense. Obviously, Devontae Adams was already checked out, and they just didn't have that guy. Now, Brock Bowers is great, but he's not vocal. He doesn't talk very much at all, actually. So having Geno Smith come in there and being able to bark at guys, and also not just bark at guys, but even to pick guys up in certain situations and say, you could believe in me that we're going to get this done, is important for that offense.
No question. And I also think all players, all NFL players, especially if they're veterans, they go through adversity. The adversity that Geno Smith has seen is a little bit different. And I think that adds so much to where this is at. Also, he's in the twilight, right? He had this resurgence after being 6 years in the league, gets to Seattle, starts to do well under Pete Carroll, and we know the story. But now he's in the last phase of his career, right? So he's got these 3 years with the Raiders, back with Pete Carroll, who brought him and helped him reach his best success. So the motivation is there. And I think that this story arc and where he's at, we always talk about timing, Mo, right? We talked about Ben Johnson as a coaching candidate back when the Raiders were searching for their new head coach after firing Antonio Pierce. And we kind of always had Pete Carroll there saying, if they don't get one of those guys, Pete Carroll would be a great hire because he can stabilize, he can set the table. And I think Geno Smith's the same way. Yes, the Raiders need to draft a young quarterback and develop a young quarterback. But this is, if you're going to go around a guy as your bridge guy, as a veteran, why not go with a guy who you could actually win with and who's going to be such a great leader in that locker room and with the organization? So I agree with you 100%. All right, the last clip we're going to play here is, and Mo, with the professional segue, he brought up Chip Kelly. And that's the other clip I pulled from the press conference, was him talking about Chip Kelly and the fact that his cousin Jeremiah Smith, who's going to be a great pro player eventually, played for Chip over at Ohio State. And so here is Geno talking about being familiar with him and what it means coming in to work with his new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I've known his system from afar. He recruited me in college, when he was at Oregon, and I really, gave it some thought. I thought about going there. Really liked Chip then, just kind of followed him throughout. So, when he went to the Eagles, actually had an interview with them when I was coming out for the draft, so I got to meet him again there. And then, last year he was coaching Jeremiah, so, I just watched their team. I watched the way that he handled, the injuries that they had. I watched the way that he managed having two really good running backs, and those guys, equally had 1,000 yards. They had a bunch of really good receivers who they spread the ball out to. There's a lot of things to like about this system. Obviously, I've got to dive into it and really just learn the ins and outs of it and how he wants things to be run. But just
there you go. Geno Smith on working with Chip Kelly. Mo, what's interesting here, too, is you look at Chip Kelly, his system, what he's run both in the NFL and in college. What pops into your head? I mean, Geno Smith said he kind of knows it from afar. It's not like he's steeped in it and he's been playing in it. But is there anything that needs to change about his game, or is there anything that Kelly's going to have to adapt in order for Geno Smith to fit better in what we know Chip Kelly does?
I think it's a matter of Chip Kelly just getting to know Geno Smith more as a player. So Chip Kelly does a good job of tailoring his offense to the talent around that he has. I know that's a cliche, that's something cliche to say about head coaches and offensive play callers and what they're supposed to do. But Chip Kelly has actually shown that since his days in Philadelphia, because I know people are going to bring up Philadelphia and San Francisco, how his offense fizzled out. But he went back to college, he went to UCLA, and you can see that he was working with his players. And what I mean by that is that you get a player like Zach Charbonnet. What does he do well? He's a bigger running back running between the tackles. And you saw how that UCLA offense ran with Charbonnet there. He goes to Ohio State. And what does he have at Ohio State? He has Travion Henderson. And he has Quinshon Judkins, who I still want to be a Raider, by the way. And you see how Chip Kelly, ran more gaps blocking scheme for those guys. Because it worked. And it worked. And Geno Smith talked about working around the injuries and just having the next man up mentality again, which is another cliche. But Chip Kelly actually put that into practice. It wasn't just lip service. So I think that's also important when you look at Geno Smith as a player. Even though he wasn't a starter for most of his career, he's only started, I believe, 5 seasons in total between the Jets and the Seattle Seahawks. But there's enough film on tape for Chip Kelly to pour over, and I'm sure he's looking over it now as the Raiders are building their roster, moving into the draft. How can I put Geno Smith in the best position to succeed in my offense? What do I need to run? What type of schemes work for Geno Smith? Because Geno Smith has a strong arm. He can also give you something in the run game. I'm not saying he's going to run for 500 yards, but he's a spry 34-year-old quarterback, going to be 35 in October. He can move. He can use his wheels. And with Chip Kelly's offense, I think there's so much that he can do with Geno Smith, even though he's a 34-year-old quarterback. Because usually when you think 34-year-old quarterback, you think, oh, he's going to be limited. It's not the case with Geno Smith. He has the arm and he has the athleticism.
Right. And as you mentioned last week, he sat for 6 years. So at 34 years, you're talking about him being a young 34, a spry 34, and that's because he hasn't taken a lot of abuse, right? So that helps. So he's got a little more tread on the tire, so to speak, and that's really good news, I think, for everybody. Now, it doesn't change the fact the Raiders still need to look at developing a quarterback. For those of you who are really excited about Geno Smith, don't let that distract you from the chess game, because it's not checkers, it's chess. You got to play 3-4 moves ahead. And the Raiders need to do that at quarterback. But it was refreshing to see that and the leadership. Now it'll be, how does it take hold in the locker room and who do they put around Geno Smith in the draft, in free agency trades, whatever it may be, to build this roster once we get past the NFL draft. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. Anything else stick out to you, Mo? Like you said, press conferences are always love fests. It's not going to be anything. You're not going to get any real amazing epiphanies from these things. But did anything else stick out to you from the rest of the Geno Smith press conference?
Nothing particular other than when he talked about, I think I'm not saying it was a setup question, but there was an opportunity for Geno Smith to take a shot at Seattle on the way out of the door. I think it was asked, like, how do you feel about, how things ended in Seattle? And I like that Geno Smith, in a sense, took a high road and said, I got love for all of those guys, and I'm just looking forward. So he's not thinking about, okay, what happened in the past. And again, I think it was more of a trust factor with Pete Carroll coming to Las Vegas. It wasn't like it was hard feelings with Seattle, like things ended sourly. Because a lot of times what you think about is, if one team traded him away and he's a starting quarterback, why would the Raiders want him, right? Because some people had that perspective of, why are we taking someone else's cast off, in a sense? If they didn't want him, why would we want him? And I think it was a matter of Geno Smith understanding that, as I said earlier, that perhaps his time was sooner or later going to come to an end, and maybe he was going to have the same job security, even though Seattle offered him a contract. As I always say, look at the contract structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I get the sense, and again, I didn't talk directly to Geno Smith, but I get the sense that he sort of grew out of Seattle and that he was willing to continue to grow with Pete Carroll in Las Vegas, and that he can have another resurgence, so to speak, with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good stuff there. All right. We're going to take our break. When we come back on the second segment of this show, happy Thursday, by the way, what we're going to do is we're going to get to your calls. Yes. Raider Nation mailbag. Got some doozies. Mo, we got an international call today. Yes. We're big across the pond, as they say. So we'll get into that. By the way, if you want to be part of the show next time and you want to call in, leave your message, comments, whatever it may be, you want to leave a love poem to Mo or, curse us, whatever you want to do, just 702-900-7869 is a number. 702-900-7869 to be part of Silver and Black today. You're with Mo and Scott. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, home stretch here on this edition of Silver and Black today. Happy April. It's spring. Where I'm at in Ohio does not feel like spring. I walked outside the door today to walk the dogs, 26 degrees. Mo, what the hell is happening? We're supposed to have like 60, 70 degrees. I know you've had some cold up there in New York. I was watching the Yankee game the other night, and I'm like, They're all in headgear and stuff. We're done with this, aren't we, man?
Aaron Judge is wearing what the kids call today a shiesty.
Yes, a shiesty.
So it's still it still feels like winter. I would say winter, but it feels like late winter here. I don't mind it. I'm a cold weather guy. I'm the type of guy that if I play in the NFL, below 50-degree temperatures wouldn't have bothered me. I'm not taking a shot at a former Raiders quarterback there.
Yes.
But colder temperatures don't bother me. Not that I'm going outside with my shirt off when it's 30 degrees, but I like a little wind in my forecast. I even like a little drizzle in my forecast.
Love drizzle.
I'm an April baby, so I like a little rain. I like a little cold. I like a little briskness when I walk out in the morning. I'm not a heat guy, so this is perfect weather for me. So I hope it's extended. But yeah, Scott, it's a bit cool in New York City.
Yeah, and I'm with you on this, buddy. I'm kind of a confused individual because I love the sunshine. Because I mean, obviously, I grew up in California mostly, and then spent so much time in Las Vegas living twice, right? So I love the sunlight, and so I think for me, being back in winter is I miss the sun more than the heat, right? So the sunshine I like. But unfortunately, where we live, you on the East Coast, me in the upper Midwest, almost East area, Northeast, it's like I just miss the sun. So like yesterday, it was sunny but cool. And so it was great. Like I love that piece of it. But then when it's cold and cloudy, if it's cold and cloudy, it might as well rain because I do like the rain. I'm with you on that one. By the way, we have to wish Mo a happy birthday. Today is his birthday. It's Thursday, April 10th. Mo is finally turned 50. No, I'm just kidding. He's much younger than that. I'm just trying to make him as old as I am. But Mo is celebrating his birthday. As he said, he's an April baby. And man, we just want to wish you a happy birthday. I know you've had such a great year of success, not only with Bleacher Report, but here and other places. And a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. That's none of anybody's business, but everything's going well for you. And so, my friend, I want to wish you a happy birthday. I've sent over a cake. Jacob from Fresno is going to jump out of the cake.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I'm not sure if he's wearing a banana hammock or not, but I can't take responsibility for that. But thank you, Jacob, for making the trip to New York to jump out of the cake later today. No, I'm kidding. Jacob did call in. He's coming up here in a second, but Mo, happy birthday, my man.
I appreciate you, Scott. And that's probably why I came on without a microphone, because I was up late partying the night before with some pre-birthday activities. So I was a little out of sorts when I came on. Mentioned Jacoby Myers with the Jets. That was a mistake, obviously. He's with the Patriots. Duh, Mo.
AFC East.
First of all, AFC East, same division. But I appreciate anyone who wished me happy birthday. Had a few people in my lives who are early with the birthday wishes. A guy that shows up a lot, Jason Alito. I don't know if he listens to this show. I think he does, but
better.
Really do appreciate the the birthday wishes. Even though I try to keep, I don't really talk too much about my birthday. I do say like April is the month, but I don't really get into specific days. I'm a really low key guy, but as I said, had some partying the night before the show, so that's why the microphone wasn't all the way turned on.
This wasn't a Diddy party, was it?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. Whew. I thought I knew you. I just want to make sure.
Absolutely not.
Just want to make sure. But no, I mean, but happy birthday. And by the way, so you're still on the stage where, birthdays are good. You're celebrating all that stuff. You get to my age, you wake up on your birthday and you say, oh, I'm still alive. So enjoy them, man. It's good. But also celebrate. Yes. Celebrate life and it goes on, and we have challenges, we have ups and downs, but above ground and breathing is good. And I'm glad that you're with us for another year, my friend. It's always good. So, all right, let's move on now. We're going to get to, yeah, go.
Got a couple of grays in the beard, but I'm glad I'm still kind of youthful looking. If you look close,
a couple grays. Come on, man. You got to catch up. At least you got your hair right, and I don't know if the baldness thing runs in your family. So if you're going to eventually have to shave it all off or not, which, hey, I always tell my good buddy, Irv Mitchell here in Cincinnati, former firefighter for 34 years, who's retired now. he's African American, and he started to lose his hair. And I saw pictures of him when he was young with the fro and everything. Great head of hair. Now he's completely shaved. And I told him, we were talking about it one day. He's like, well, are you going to lose yours? I said, well, mine goes back. I don't think I'm going to lose mine completely because that wasn't on my mom's side. But I said, like, if I was going to go bald, I definitely want to be black because I just think black men, no, seriously, like for some reason, you dudes just like when you go, you shave it, it looks awesome, right? And maybe that's because I grew up a fan of Isaac Hayes and these guys, and they were bald too, and they just look badass. So you got that to look forward to, Mo, if you have to go that direction. So, boy, we got off target. All right, let's get back to football. Let's get back to phone calls. All right, Jacob in Fresno was the first call up. No cake involved.
Scat. Gulbransen and Middy Town Moton. This is Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guy? You know what? I am not a GM. I don't pretend to be, but I do play one on Madden. Guys, I am excited about this draft, and the way I see it, I've got two situations that I think would work out perfectly. I'm preferring one over the other, but I'm going back and forth, really. I think no matter what we do, the first 2 rounds, we should target a quarterback and a running back. And I think the 2 possibilities are Ashton Janty in the first round, right? And maybe a Jalen Milroe in the second if he's there. I think we would take that. I think Raider Nation would like that. They would all be kind of happy with that. And the other thing, I think, is Shedeur Sanders, if he's still there. Somebody like that, a Shedeur Sanders. And Cam Scattaboo. I mean, when I think of Cam Scattaboo, this is really why I want to call, because I want to talk about this. Cam Scattaboo is just such a throwback. When you look at him, doesn't it just seem like he would have been a Hall of Famer in the NFL from 1940? I mean, I could just hear the sportscaster right now. Look at Cam Scattaboo. Cam Scattaboo stands a towering 5'6", a shredded 250 pounds, folks. He eats a wicked diet of grits and bacon and a little bit more bacon. He is intensively dieting, folks. One of the fastest, most impressive athletes in the world, they say. I could just see him on NFL films. I could see just all the craziness when they had the leatherhead helmets. He just seems like a throwback. Do I think he's going to be a Raider? I don't know. Probably not. But if we were to get a guy like Shedeur in the first round, I think I'd settle for Cam Scattaboo. Scattaboo, even the name, it's crazy, isn't it? But if I'm telling you where my heart is really at, I think right now all the hype is really getting to me. I'm looking forward to Ashton Janty putting on the silver and black. And I'm trying not to get my hopes up because maybe we're going to do something crazy like draft Jalen, whatever his name is, the edge rusher, and it's going to break my heart. But if we were to get a guy like Janty and Shedeur Sanders, those 2, one of those guys in the first, I'd be very happy. But I appreciate you guys. You let me know. Am I crazy? I am crazy. But you got to take it easy. You go Raiders.
Jacob, good call to start off with. The call it back to talk like an old broadcaster. That was awesome. I love that. And it is Cam Scattaboo. We'll get into him in a second. But Mo, I want to call this out because from you, from all fans in Raider Nation, from other people I've seen, they say the same thing, and I totally get it and don't disagree based on history, which is everything. And I think I've seen you post this several times to people you're talking to online. And just, whatever the Raiders are going to do is exactly the opposite of what you think they're going to do, right? I disagree this time. I think if you look at how this Raiders offseason has gone, what they've done from hiring the coach to the GM and what the GM has done, which all hasn't been perfect. They still have needs. I think this is something I saw it on NFL Network. I think it was yesterday. The guys on Good Morning Football were talking about how there's a common sense here that we haven't seen with the Raiders in a really long time. So when it comes to the draft, I think Janty makes so much sense. Now all the mocks are having him, and you never know what happens. Trades happen, all kinds of things happen. But to me, if I have a scale and the scale's leaning towards one way, I think the scale's leaning towards the more predictable, where in past years, I would say it was leaning to the unpredictable because it's the Raiders. Tell me why I'm wrong, or give me the counterpoint to that.
You're right in the sense that the Raiders are doing things that you more expect now. Whereas a lot of the moves that they made in the past have been kind of out of left field. Like, whoa, they hired that guy? Who gets he? Now it seems like the moves that they're making make a lot more sense, even to the common fan, who's not, as Jacob said, he's not a GM. Right. We're not GMs either. But we have our predictions and projections, and it seems as though the Raiders are doing things you would think a football team would do after making certain moves. Now, when it comes to the draft is unpredictable, right? And that's where I know you've seen the comments that I've made to people in the past, where I'm not saying that the Raiders pick is going to be surprising in a bad way, because the Raiders have a lot of those, right? In recent years. What I'm saying is that the draft is so unpredictable that the Raiders may feel like, okay, we can draft Ashton Genty, but let's say someone falls. Then what? Like I said last year, now Brock Bowers wasn't expected to be there for the Raiders, but Brock Bowers, in a sense, I don't want to say fell into their laps, but it was like, wow, Brock Bowers is available. But even when the Raiders were up for the pick, and I remember our draft night show, Scott, we weren't thinking, oh, they got to take Brock Bowers here. There was an air of surprise, like, wow, they took Brock Bowers there. So I'm looking at it as, I said this either at the end of last week. I don't have a problem with the Raiders taking Ashton Genty at 6. I'm just not locked into Ashton Genty at 6 because I do understand the unpredictable nature of the draft. I understand the Raiders draft history. I know this is a new regime. This is not the John Gruden era. This is not the Reggie McKenzie era. This is the John Spytek, Pete Carroll era. And Pete Carroll, as I said, experienced dealing with personnel and had a hand in the draft in Seattle. But I'm just opening my mind to other possibilities, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because to me, when you say locked in, I like that term, because I think and I'm just talking to the fans now, not us looking at it from an objective point of view, but more from a fan point of view, is the idea that don't be locked in that if it's not him at 6 and he's still available, don't be A, surprised, and B, don't be disappointed, because who they get also depends on that. I understand it. But like you, I can see if the Raiders, if Ashton Genty's there at 6, but again, as we said, if Shedeur Sanders is there and they really like him, we don't know if they do, right? We just don't know how they're thinking. But if they really like him and think this is our future quarterback, this is the guy, then I wouldn't be surprised or disappointed, because that could very much, and to your point about the you don't know how the draft's going to go. It's unpredictable. And that's the thing I'm trying to just point out to people, is don't think of the draft as being unpredictable because the Raiders have made some crazy decisions over the years, which is true. I think the unpredictability of what happens around them this year is more the story than it was in previous years. And you could even argue last year, they were, as much as we were shocked live on the air with the Brock Bowers pick, it made perfect sense because he was the best player available. And obviously they were proven right, even though the Telesco got fired, because look what he did in his rookie season. Unbelievable. Already the best tight end in the NFL, if you ask me. So to your point, absolutely there. Cam Skattebo. I love Cam Skattebo. As people know, my daughter went to Arizona State. She's an alum. So I like Arizona State football. I love the kid, the rough, the tumble. I think he's going to be a good pro back, but I don't think he is the bell cow or RB1. First of all, he has turnover issues, 10 fumbles last year. That's one of the negatives on him. Second, Mo, he doesn't have long speed, meaning once he gets through that line, he's not a guy who's going to break open and go off on a longer run. And I think when you're looking at RB1, you look at a Genty or one of those guys, to me, that's what you want. That doesn't mean you don't draft Cam Skattebo, but he's projected to go in the 3rd round. I don't know that the Raiders, if they take a running back in the 1st or even the 2nd, which both are possibilities, I just don't see them getting a chance to take Cam Skattebo unless something happens. To your point, it's unpredictable. They make some trades to get some extra picks, and then I can see it happening.
If you're looking for an RB1, you want someone who's more dynamic.
Yep.
Cam Skattebo hit his main calling card is that he's a bruising running back, breaks a lot of tackles. He's going to carry some guys with him. And I know John Spytek likes that quality in a running back. But you look at the type of running backs that Tampa Bay drafted, Keyshawn Vaughn, who really didn't work out, and then Bucky Irving last year.
Bucky Irving.
You look at some of the quads that they have. They're not necessarily big bruising running backs. They can break tackles, but they're also dynamic. I'm speaking specifically about Bucky Irving on this one. Bucky Irving was used also in the passing game along with Rashad White there in Tampa Bay. So I just look at the running back position, and I think that the Raiders are going to draft the running back within the first 2 rounds. I do agree with Jacob. If it's not Genti, hopefully my guy Quinshon Judkins. I also like Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. I also agree with Jacob that it could be a quarterback. But I also talked about cornerbacks on Tuesday after the release of Jack Jones. I know Pete Carroll likes Eric Stokes. DeCameron Richardson has these size measurements that you would like in a Pete Carroll cornerback. But I think when you look at the first 3 rounds, if I'm penciling in the positions that the Raiders are going to draft in the first 3 rounds, running back, quarterback, and cornerback, in whatever order, we have no clue. But I think you have to also start talking about cornerbacks. I dove into 5 in my Bleacher Report Live, and I think there's a good group of cornerbacks that you could take in days 1 and 2.
Yes, absolutely. I know talk about Will Johnson and some of those guys at the top of the heap. I think Johnson may go to New England actually before the Raiders even get a chance to pick. So we'll see what happens with there. But great call, Jacob. All right, now we're moving on. We're going across the pond, Mo. Put on your floaties. Let's start swimming. It is Raider G out in London.
Nice.
Hi, Scott, Mo. This is Raider G from London, England. I love you guys. Thank you. And keep grinding. And obviously love the cast of all these 5-star callers you've assembled. I've got a question for you both on the involvement of the coordinators during the off season. So with regard to Patrick Graham, how involved do you think he would have been in the decision to let all those guys from the secondary go? And I guess, how do you think he's feeling about the replacements? And then linked with that regarding Chip Kelly, I mean, how much influence would he have in the draft over Spytek or Pete Carroll? I mean, can he push for his own Ohio kind of running backs late in the second or wherever, or the third over Genti in the first? Or can he push, for Howard over Milrow? So just a general question regarding those 2 coordinators. How are they feeling? What's their involvement in the off-season? How much influence do they have? That'd be really interesting for me. Thanks very much, guys. All the best. Go Raiders.
All right, Raider G in London. He's talking about 5-star call. You're a 5-star caller, Raider G. Yes. A great question. Mo, talk about that, because towards the end of his message there, he brought up exactly the term that was going on in my head, which is influence, right? So an offensive defensive coordinator, they don't have the final call even on roster, but it's the influence. Now you have Patrick Graham, who's been around a lot. Obviously, Pete Carroll, defensive-minded coach, retained Patrick Graham. So obviously there's a level of trust and confidence there. And then brings in Chip Kelly, his hire, so clearly the confidence level is there. When you look at how a team with a GM, a head coach, and then coordinators constructs a roster, how does that influence work, and how much say do they have?
I think it varies from team to team. So if you have an offensive-minded head coach, I think the defensive coordinator is going to have a little more influence on the roster, because obviously that's his area of expertise, where the head coach's expertise on the other side of the ball. In the Raiders' case, I think Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham had to have an understanding that some of their principles overlap, and that's why I was able to work, because I'm sure if they had completely different philosophies for the defense, Patrick Graham could have went elsewhere. Remember, he also interviewed for the Bengals job, and I thought he was actually going to take that job before Al Golden stepped in. Al Golden was a former linebackers coach since then he came back. But I think there's, as you said, a level of trust between Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham that they can work it out. And now Raider G did ask, how do you think Pete Carroll feels about letting some of those guys go? I want to remind people that Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick were drafted for Gus Bradley's defense. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll, Patrick Graham was not there yet when those two guys were drafted in 2021. They were drafted for Gus Bradley's defense. I'm not saying that Patrick Graham didn't want those guys back, but understand they weren't inherently Patrick Graham's guys to begin with. He took the job, and Hobbs and Merrick were there already. So when Pete Carroll comes in and says, hey, we want to change the secondary and we want to add different types of players in the defensive backfield, bigger defensive backs, Jeremy Chin, we're going to give Isaiah Polamalu a push. I think I think Patrick Graham was on board with that. Again, not necessarily because Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick weren't his guys, but understanding that, keep in mind, those two particular stars weren't specifically drafted for Patrick Graham's defense. So I think there was a little more flexibility in what Pete Carroll may have wanted to do with the secondary versus what Patrick Graham had in the past few years. Really quick on Chip Kelly. As I said, when you have a head coach whose expertise is on the other side of the ball and you have an offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, I would assume, has major influence on roster personnel. Pete Carroll obviously wants a certain vision for his team, but he's a defensive-minded head coach. And I think he's going to give Chip Kelly, who's an experienced offensive play caller. You talk about Philly, San Francisco, UCLA, Ohio State. When you have an experienced play caller, as the kids say, let that guy cook. Let that person cook and do his thing. So because Chip Kelly has some pelts on the wall, as I said, has some experience. So I think Pete Carroll, when it comes to the offense side of the ball, is going to step aside and say, hey, this is how I want it to look, but do what's best for your designed offense, and we'll work with what we have.
Yeah, and I think too the thing here is you talk about also the GM, John Spytek, a new GM. Now, this is just my pure opinion, pure speculation by watching the interactions and body language between those two guys the times they've been together. And that is, I believe in every fiber of my being that John Spytek is his own guy, right? He is not doing what Pete Carroll tells him to do. He doesn't take orders from Pete Carroll, but Pete Carroll has a Super Bowl ring. Okay, Pete Carroll carries more weight than a younger head coach coming in would have carried to a certain degree. So I think there's a dynamic there of Pete Carroll and John Spytek, whereas Spytek's going to say, hey, you know what? This guy knows what he's doing, but he also is going to fall in love with who he falls in love with because he's a coach. So I need to check him. He needs to check me. He needs to tell me what he wants. That comes from his assistants, just like we were talking about with the coordinators. And then him and Spytek then have to come to some sort of agreement. And I think with losing players, one thing in the modern NFL with salary caps and all that stuff, now, when into the offseason, everybody's like, well, the Raiders got all this money. Yeah, but they have a lot of needs too. And so you look at that and you say, hey, we might not want to lose Nate Hobbs, but guess what? The market drove his price up and our limit was this. And the Raiders having the ability and the fortitude to say, yeah, we're losing a good player, but we think we can do better based on what we're going to be doing with this team and the way we're building this roster. So there's a lot of factors in there, and you hate to say goodbye to some of those guys, but understand there's a reason for it. They're not just losing guys and it's a net negative. There could be a net positive there. Remember, Pete Carroll also teaches a class, I think it's called The Game of Life or something like that, about influence and about persevering and about how you go through life, scheduling out and organizing yourself. So that all working together is why I think you see this Raider organization, at least on the outward perspective, just seemingly more put together now, which is great. And Tom Brady obviously has a say in that too. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. Good stuff. All right. Thank you, Raider G. Now we're going on to our resident comedian. And I do mean that because that's what his profession is AJ DeMello. Here's AJ.
How you guys doing? It's AJ DeMello here in Texas. I live here now in Austin. It's beautiful. Anyways, it's also beautiful that we have a quarterback, and I think it's I posted online about it on my Facebook right afterwards, and a bunch of Niner fans, surprise, because I said, we finally have a quarterback, which is half joking because of all we've been through, but at the same time, I was being serious. Guy's accurate, and it screams of look out once he gets put in the right situation again. So, and I hope I'm hoping the draft that both those quarterbacks get taken before us so we can make the right decision overall, because we need players now. Like Mason Graham, I feel like that would be the best pick for us. Add to that defensive line, trade back into the first and get like your quarterback to develop. I would love Ashton Genty. I'm gonna trust this. This is the first time I felt like I'm just gonna trust the staff and the people above, though. But there's one thing that's bothering me. Pete Carroll, I love you, but get some Raiders gear, bro. Like, what are you allergic? Well, what's happening? The shield got you down. You know, you put a Raiders logo up in your bathroom, and you can't like pee right. Like what's going on, man? Like, I got nothing against Pete Carroll. I really love that he's our head coach, but man, put on some Raiders gear, dude. You don't got to be like Antonio Pierce and scream at the press conferences. I mean, that was weird. But you know, I am excited. I just would love to see Pete Carroll wear an actual Raiders emblem on his shirt, maybe for the draft or when he takes the field. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe, I don't know. It's kind of a thing that happens, you know, coach wearing, you know, the emblem. So that's my only thing. But I'm really excited, and we need a wide receiver, we need a running back, and we need a quarterback. And hopefully defensive tackle and linebacker, which we never get, and we never try, and we always try and get a cornerback that fails. So I hope we don't get a cornerback, and if we do, I hope he's the best cornerback ever, because it's going to make me sad. All right, I hope you guys have a good show. Happy, it's almost 420 coming up. All right, see you later. Shark Week's in a couple of months. All right, bye.
All right, there's AJ DeMello from Austin, Texas. Congrats on your move to Austin, my man, and I love Austin. Absolutely. Mo, well, let's start. I get it. Like, there have been a few times where I saw Pete Carroll speaking on behalf of the Raiders, and he's not wearing team gear, and it's kind of like, no, he wasn't. It's not like he's wearing Seattle gear or some other kind of stuff. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not a fan. Like, I don't like. To me, it's not important. I think what Pete Carroll does on the field means much more. And I think once the season gets rolling, he'll be wearing that gear. I mean, but it's just an interesting take by AJ there. Second, and this is where I really want to get your comments, Mo, is on the draft and what he's talking about there overall. Love Mason Graham. Would be amazing to have Mason Graham on the Raiders. I think he goes to Jacksonville before the Raiders have a chance. I really do. I mean, I'm almost convinced that's who Jacksonville's going to take, but we'll see what happens. What do you think about his thoughts there as far as quarterback versus running back versus wide receiver, especially in that first or second round?
I think it's on point. The wide receiver, though I do like Ted McMillan more than a lot of other people, I just don't see him as the pick at 6. So because wide receiver is not the, I don't want to say you draft for need, but if you're drafting Tet, you're understanding that he's probably going to be number 2 at best in targets. And you can't forget about Jacoby Myers either. I just think they're going to take a guy who fills a bigger need. Again, you're not drafting for need, but Genty checks both boxes where he could be the best player available and fill a need. So you knock off 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. But I do agree with a lot of what AJ said. The one thing that stood out to me, and it's not the fact that Pete Carroll has been wearing Raider gear. I can send him one of these Midtown Mo hoodies. But one thing that stood out to me, and that I haven't heard a lot in the past few years, is that he trusts the team's brain trust. He trusts the team's decision making. And I hear a lot of that from a lot of fans that I wouldn't usually hear that from. Usually there's a lot of now there's still pessimism out there, of course. There's always going to be pessimism.
Sure, got to prove it.
I'm hearing more and more fans saying they trust this regime more than they trusted the previous regimes with Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels and then even Antonio Pierce. While a lot of fans love Antonio Pierce and his enthusiasm and his passion for being part of the franchise officially, a lot of people question some of his decision making, even going back to when he was an interim, even when things were going well. Like, is this something that's sustainable? And I think I questioned it on the show. But I hear more fans say that they trust Pete Carroll, even though John Spivak is technically a first-time, full-time primary GM who's an assistant at Tampa Bay. Knowing that Pete Carroll, the decades that he's been coaching, there's a lot of trust there. There's a lot of, okay, we know who Pete Carroll is. We know what he did in Seattle. We know what he did at USC. We know what he did at New England. So there's a level of trust there, I think, within Raider Nation. And Raider fans can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. There's a level of trust that's there now with this regime that wasn't there in the past few years.
Yeah, I think there's just better track record. Not like you said, Spy Tech. Yes, he was number 2 there in Tampa Bay, but we heard and we've seen the influence he had there and what he was able to drive there. Of course, the blessing and really the recruitment of Spy Tech by Tom Brady, who worked directly with him, speaks volumes. And then you have Pete Carroll, obviously a winner, and what he's been able to do wherever he's gone. And it just, yeah, I won't use the term adults in the room, but it just like the level of experience and success that these guys have all had together or in different situations apart from each other has been unheralded. I mean, you can't argue with it. So I think that goes to that. Great point, Moton. That's good. All right, man. Thank you, AJ. Keep calling in, man. Appreciate you. Let us know about the comedy gigs and we'll promote them for you down there as well. All right, now our last call of the day. Ready? Oh yeah, it's somebody very close to us and close to everybody's heart, and that is our good buddy Murph over at Raider Nation Radio. By the way, Mo, you talked about your sweatshirt, and Murph and I are going through the same thing. The company T Republic, who we sell that stuff through, sent both Murph and the folks over at Raider Nation Radio and us a note that they've pulled down all of our merchandise because it violates copyright law, apparently from the NFL. Which is funny because none of the stuff we sell has any Raiders mentions, doesn't have any Raider logos, doesn't have any Raider trademarked or copyright stuff on it, including your Midtown Mo sweatshirt. Now, we're going to get it back up. Don't worry. It's coming back. But it's so frustrating because I don't doubt that the NFL sent them some blanket letter, but none of our stuff violates anybody's copyrights because it's all original designs and it has nothing to do with the Raiders other than it's silver and black, and people know that has to do with the Raiders, but that's it. So if you're looking for your Midtown Mo, now your t-shirt for summer, it'll be back up along with our other stuff, but just want to share that. But anyway, here's Murph, who called in to grace us with his presence on the show.
Las Vegas, Gully, and Midtown Mo Moton. This is Murph. 4th time, long time. Huge fan of the show. Hey guys, so something came up this week, and it was really interesting because Mo is always right about everything, which is not shocking because he's always right about everything. But he made a comment on the last show about how there was a section of Raider fans that he didn't feel have moved on entirely from a certain quarterback to or number 4. What's really interesting to me is that they came up like right afterwards. There was somebody on the Twitters there, on the X, as the kids call it, and this person was trying to draw a direct comparison based on the head-to-head matchups between Geno Smith and Derek Carr and citing stats and all this stuff. And it was like, it's just such a bizarre. Fans are still latched onto this. And as Kylo Ren said, let the past die. And otherwise it's destined to control your future. Like, I'm just shocked that some fans have still not moved on from this. And then that was just one person's comment, but then there was a whole litany of comments rallying and support around it. I just don't understand it. I guess, I'm asking the question and I'm saying it like this. I sympathize with those folks, frankly. Like, if that's your favorite player and all that, I get that. But the laboring for him to return and the pining for the fact that he's gone now and not willing to move on mentally to another, I don't understand it. I genuinely don't get it. And I don't know. And I'm curious to why. And that's the other thing too. And then I'm gonna shut up, let you guys talk. I'm curious to why, like, what's the psychology behind it? Because it wasn't like we won a bunch of Super Bowls or Derek was an MVP or led us to postseason runs or anything. So I'm just curious to what it was that's driving that behavior in certain Raider fans. Okay. Love you guys. I talk enough. Goodbye.
All right, my buddy Murph. Murph, thanks for calling in. And off the top, Mo, I want you to react to that. But my reaction is something I said earlier in the show. or coming back from the break, we were talking about comments and stuff about our show, is that to me, that psychology is win at all costs mentality. We live in the culture where I want to not only win an argument, but I want to prove you wrong and make you feel smaller, right? And if I can do that by using stats, and even though the teams have moved on, the players moved on, I'm going to be right. And I want to prove you wrong at all costs. Doesn't matter if it's logical. Doesn't matter if it's good for me mentally. I'm just going to do it. I want to continue to do it and crush you. To me, with the Derek Carr situation, outside of like Murph said, people who, hey, if that was your favorite player and he really connected with you and that was your guy, understand it. But to me, the psychology is that people just want to be right and bust balls.
That, and I think there's another element at work here. Let's remember Derek Carr is a starter for the Raiders for 9 seasons, about a decade.
Long time.
So for some Raider fans, he is a sign of stability for an organization that, let's be honest, has been unstable. He has been the one element of you can count on Derek Carr being there.
Mm.
And I compare this to me growing up and watching Rich Gannon. How, let's say if Rich Gannon had been with the Raiders for 10 years, right? And now the Raiders had more success with Rich Gannon, obviously, but how would I feel as a younger fan if I'm watching Rich Gannon win playoff games with the Raiders, get close to taking the Raiders to a Super Bowl win? How would I feel if the Raiders had just moved on from Rich Gannon and Rich Gannon is still in the league and I feel like Rich Gannon is still a good quarterback? Because Derek Carr supporters out there still feel like he is a quality quarterback and can lead a team to the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. There are fans who believe that. So I'm just trying to understand from the perspective of how would I have felt if this was Rich Gannon, back in the early 2000s. And I think you say this all the time, Scott. You say this a lot, that a lot of people get attached, fans get attached to these players. And I understand that. They're out there at these practices, preseason, signing jerseys, signing all types of stuff. So there's a connection there. And when you've been around an organization for 9 years, now, as Murph said, you haven't won any playoff games, but when you've been around, you won some games and you had some good moments, 2016 in particular. People still thinking what would have been if Derek Carr hadn't fractured the lower portion of his leg. But think of it from the perspective of you've been watching Derek Carr for 10 years and he's still in the league and he isn't close to retirement, we think, yet. And he's still a starter in this league. And then the replacement that you had for Derek Carr wasn't good. And the replacement for that replacement wasn't good. And Aiden O'Connell wasn't ready. I understand from the perspective of the connection of, man, we had somebody stable and a decent quarterback, and we're floundering now. Now, where I disagree and push back on it is you have to move, as Murph said, you have to move on. Derek Carr is with the Saints now. He's not coming back anytime soon. The Raiders have signed Geno Smith to an extension. He's going to be their starting quarterback for at least 2-3 years. What happened to supporting the guy who's there right now? You can love, I'm not saying you have to all of a sudden hate Derek Carr because he's a Saint. You can still love Derek Carr, but support the guy who's wearing your team's jersey, because that guy is gonna have a big impact on your team's success going forward. So again, you can watch Derek Carr from afar and say, man, I miss Derek Carr in the days we had stability there, but understand it's a new era, and Geno Smith is a pretty damn good quarterback.
Yeah, but I will say this, and some of you won't like me saying this, so be it. But I don't think I've ever seen, in watching the entire NFL, I don't write about the entire NFL like you do. I write about the Raiders, but I do watch it all, right, Mo? And it's curious to me because I find that Raider fans, at least the interactions and watching online, again, that's just online, so I don't know if that's in reality with other people outside that stuff or not, is that I've never seen a fan base that wants to go back to players that used to play for them more than Raider fans. Like, case in point, they visit with Hunter Renfrow, and I know you help fuel that one. But Hunter Renfrow, it's like, oh, Hunter Renfrow, and people like, and I see for like the last week, people are obsessed with it. It's like, look, Hunter Renfrow is a great guy. Again, I had a business relationship with him. He was on my show on Raider Nation Radio, and love the guy, great family. But you can't you should be so excited about the future that you're not worried about the past. That doesn't mean you don't honor. It doesn't mean you don't remember those guys with fondness, but you should be excited about the future and what guy's going to step into that role that you don't even know yet and get excited about that person. I don't know. That's just the way I think. I'm not telling people it's wrong the way they think. I'm just making an observation that I see it more with Raider Nation than I've seen it with any other fan base. And it's just curious to me. I don't know
I
if
have
you
a
have a
theory
take on
there,
it.
Scott.
What is it?
Theory there, Scott, to tie it back to when I first came on for my pre-birthday celebrations and I was fumbling getting on the show. Remember what I said about what Mark Davis does? He goes out of his way to honor
a good
former
point.
Raiders. And
Yep.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. But what that also does is it gets fans to fall in love with the past. And sometimes people hang on to the past more than they should in certain situations. Now, if you talk about alumni, fine. But you talk about former players coming back, as the kids say, bringing him home. Now, I did feel the Hunter Renfrow thing because I think he actually makes sense as a slot wide receiver. As I said, Trey Tucker's played mostly on the outside with the Raiders. So I think it makes sense for Hunter Renfrow if he's assuming he's healthy after those concussions. But a lot of fans have also brought up Amari Cooper, and I just don't see Amari Cooper coming back to be a Raider because, one, this is the first, and a lot of people don't talk about this. This is the first time in Amari Cooper's career that he is a free agent. He was traded 3 times.
Right.
Drafted by the Raiders, traded to the Cowboys. Traded from the Cowboys to the Cleveland Browns. Traded from the Browns to the Buffalo Bills. This is the first time that Amari Cooper can control where he wants to play. And I think at this stage in his career, at 31 years old, where his play is starting to decline a bit, he's going to want to play for a ready-made contender. Now, the Raiders are trying to get there, but they're not there yet. So a lot of people say, what about Amari Cooper? What about Amari Cooper? Bring him home. I don't think Amari Cooper wants to go back to that. I think he wants to go to a ready-made play contender. But as I said, with the way the organization is and Mark Davis touting, former Raiders, I think that leaks into the fan base where they think, okay, if a guy that used to play for the Raiders is still halfway decent, we got to bring him back. And sometimes you just got to move on.
Yes. It's like every time, it's like opining for your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, even though you've moved on and they've moved on. It's like, why? You can't always go backwards. It's not always a good thing. And sometimes going back to it actually ruins the history of it, right? Because you end up getting a player and maybe they don't come. Maybe you sign Hunter Renfrow and he does awesome. Great. Perfect. Which is what I would love for the guy because he's a good human being. But let's say he comes back and he gets cut, doesn't do well. Then how do you feel about that? Or if he comes back and he's just not the same player, it can go either way. So, be careful what you wish for sometimes, but interesting stuff. All right. That's going to wrap up this show. Went almost an hour and 20 minutes. And we're working on some interviews for the draft coverage that we're going to get into as the draft is fast approaching now, a few weeks away. Ooh. And Mo and I, are we going to get caught live again on draft night, Mo, with that look on our face with the Raiders? I don't think so. I think it's going to be like, I expected one of those guys. It could be 1 or 2 or 3 different guys, but I don't think there'll be much surprise based on the need and based on who's in charge now. So we're going to see. But Mo, tell everybody about your Bleacher Report lives and what else you got coming up on the written side of things so they can keep track of the birthday boy.
So Bleacher Report Live, over at Bleacher Report, we're going to do something sort of different. Actually, we did this last year. We're going to do a creator mock draft where we're going to have 32 people represent each team in the NFL. Of course, I'll be representing the Raiders. Shocker there. And we're going to have that mock draft air next Thursday on the 17th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Sorry. So we'll have that air on the Bleacher Report app. And what we're going to do is I'm going to make the first round pick and the division rivals will respond to my pick. It's going to be a fun interactive show. If you tuned into it last year, same type of setup, just a different pick slot. But I will have my normal Bleacher Report live shows Monday through Wednesday, though on Wednesday on the 16th, the day before the creator mock draft, I'll be on 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. I'll be on a little earlier because I got to prepare for the mock draft. And of course, every week I have my Sports Not piece up on a topical issue, whatever is going on within the Raider Nation. If a topic is buzzing, hit my DMs. I still do answer my DMs for the people. Sometimes I get a lot of requests, so if I don't answer right away, my apologies there. But shoot me a topic going into the draft, and I'll take it into consideration, pitch it to the people at Sportsnot, and try to get it done for you.
Now, hypothetical, Mo, if Junior's Cheesecake DMs you, do you answer?
I probably block that account and never speak to that person again. If anything, mint chocolate chip comes up in my DMs, I probably block that person as well and never speak to that person again. Of course, Scott, you are the exception. But anyone else mentioning mint chocolate chip or cheesecake, automatic block.
Yeah. Or pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, that's too automatic.
Don't argue with us. Don't argue with us on it. Just don't even go there. All right. Good stuff. Make sure you follow Mo on X as well. MOEMOTON. I am at LV Gully. This has been Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports Original podcast. Again, do us a favor, subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black today. Do us a favor. Also, rate and review. If you're watching us, you can subscribe to the audio version. You see the QR code in the right hand of your corner above Mo's head. You can scan that and go right to it. So please do that. Even if you watch us, make sure you also do it on the audio side. We certainly appreciate it. Want to thank our producer, Mike Robier, over at Odyssey for all the work he does. For Mo Moton, I am Scott Gulbransen. This has been Silver and Black today. We will see you all next week. Take care and have a great one. All right.